Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.
We hope you enjoy listening to this podcast of St. Louis on the Air, brought to you by University College at Washington University, with undergraduate and graduate programs part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University, offering world-class education within reach.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. The next episode of the We Live Here podcast will be out tomorrow, and it continues the season-long focus on St. Louis housing issues. No question, vacant property is a concern here, with thousands of empty homes and vacant parcels. One young man is trying to put people on these properties, one home at a time. His name is Eltorian Hawkins. And with me to explain and preview the next We Live Here episode is reporter-producer Kameel Stanley. Kameel, hello.
Hello.
What is...
So his name is actually Eltorian.
Eltorian
Hawkins.
I'm having a bad day today. Eltorian Hawkins. Well, tell me what he's all about. What's he trying to do?
So Eltorian has chosen to focus on LRA properties, which are properties that are owned by our local land bank, which many people in the city know is it is, I believe, the oldest in the country. It was
71.
Yeah, it came out of the 70s. So these are homes that are basically either abandoned or they got sucked up after nobody paid the taxes, and they are owned by the LRA, and they're usually pretty cheap. And so Eltorian is a young 20-something who grew up in the Walnut Park neighborhood, and he's just decided to take it upon himself. He's bought a couple of these properties himself and has renovated them, and now he's teaching others how to do it.
Does he do the renovating himself?
He does what he can. He's got some great, cool handyman skills. But if it's like permitted stuff, of course, other folks will help him. But he's been lucky. He's been finding a lot of these properties aren't as derelict as they seem, and they can be brought back. So that's his focus.
I wonder what kind of a yardstick he uses with regard to what he can and can't do. Some of them, and listening to your piece, some of the places sounded like they might be in really bad shape.
Some of them are, but many of them can be brought back. And so he, along with another group of, he along with some other people here in St. Louis have started this program called the Finest 15. So what they do is they go into neighborhoods and they look at kind of the housing stock of the LRA properties. They find the 15 best of them, and they showcase those to people. They kind of market them and advertise them and give people tours. And it kind of, in their opinion, these are like the 15 best houses in a particular neighborhood that are ripe for people to come in and renovate, whether that's to live in them themselves or to perhaps as investors.
Clearly, this is absolutely important for neighborhoods. You can't have a lot of vacant houses or vacant parcels of land and expect the neighborhood to thrive.
Yes, and his neighborhood has quite a bit. They have there's about 300 or something vacant parcels, and about half of those are houses. Some of those right now are being torn down, like the wood frame ones, but a lot of the brick homes, they can be renovated with the right touch and the right effort put into them.
There's really a lot of great housing stock, even though a lot of it's been in disrepair. The basic stock, the footprint, if you will, is pretty good. Totally.
St. Louis has some beautiful homes. We went on some tours of some of these houses with Eltorian, and I mean the craftsmanship in some of these homes that are super old but just are beautiful. Original hardwood and great masonry and all sorts of stuff that you can really see great bones. And a lot of these weren't homes that, have been sitting idle for long. They were maybe caught up when people lost them in the foreclosure crisis or later, or maybe an elderly person died and there wasn't anybody to take it over, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine that there are 12,000 properties out there that are just there.
And that's just in LRA's subset. I mean, there was a news story from our station a couple weeks ago that said I think there's 20,000 vacant houses and buildings and land in St. Louis. And so that 12,000 is just what the LRA has.
It's not just a question of blight. It's also a question of safety, isn't it, having these things restored?
Totally. When we were out a couple times with El Toria, and we were standing next to a house that the back had been destroyed clearly by fire. There was a lot of glass and stuff all around this abandoned house that had been abandoned for maybe 5 or 6 years. And, maybe 100 yards away were 3 little boys who were playing. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, that's one of the things that, in listening to your piece at the outset, you hear kids playing in the background as he is talking about what he's doing, and you don't want kids exposed to that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's not just a physical thing. I mean, you'll hear in the piece the kids talking about how they feel about what should happen with these houses and how they view vacancy in their neighborhood as they're growing up.
Yeah. And some of those kids were really very, very articulate about what the problem was and what should be done to deal with it. Yeah,
kids are smart. They, we don't give them enough credit, but they see what's going on, and they see that, maybe somebody used to live next door and they don't anymore longer, and they just watch the house get worse and worse.
And how are the neighborhoods reacting to his work?
Some people really embrace it, but not everyone does. And you hear that in the story, in his story. With so many properties and such a big problem, there's bound to be disagreements on how best to fix it. And so the episode really goes into his story, but also touches on, again, how people are reacting, what other ideas might be out there.
The critics of what he's doing, are they objecting on aesthetic grounds?
No, I think a lot of times one of the biggest thing is people want to make sure they want their communities to come back and they want their neighborhoods to come back, but they're wary of either speculators or people doing things just to come in and suck more out of the neighborhood.
How many places has he restored?
He himself has bought, I believe, 3 or 4 properties, and he's helped. They've helped dozens of people get LRA properties.
One house at a time.
One house at a time.
Kameel Stanley, thank you so much for being with us. Look forward to that. We can hear it tomorrow, and you can find We Live Here wherever you get your podcasts.
Anywhere.
Correct? Thank you, Kameel Stanley.
Thanks.
Support for We Live Here comes from the Metropolitan Sewer District. Archive versions of past St. Louis On the Air programs available for download or podcast at stlpublicradio.org/STLOnAir. St. Louis On the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio 90.7 KWMU. Thank you for listening. I'm Don Marsh.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.